Welcome back to the channel, guys. Behind me is one of the baddest C7s I've built in the past few years. Has all the bells and whistles, complete engine, transmission, torque converter, rear end, complete fully built drivetrain, 15-inch wheel conversion, CV axles, whole bunch of boost, fuel system. Again, everything done to this car to make it run and perform as well as look good. But it does have a cool backstory that I want to share with you guys now.
From horsepower gains to custom enhancements, we deliver results. Late model racecraft. We talking or we racing?
All right, so behind me is Mr. and Mrs. Stuberg's 2015 C7 Corvette. And most of the time y'all hear me just mention a Mr. in there when I talk about the vehicle behind me. This situation is very cool, and in my opinion, as a car builder, it gives me more enticement and makes me even more excited for building a vehicle like this. When not only do I hear from Mr. Stuberg, but as well as his wife, Miss Stuberg, when they call me saying how much horsepower they want, what kind of mods they want, and then how they want it to look. So from the get-go, guys, this car is a 2015. Back in 2017, they first reached out to me about our LMR 1000 horsepower package. We built it. It was a wonderful package, made I think 850 rear horsepower, like most of them do, with a ProCharged F-1X on it. They drove that car for I think a year and a half, I think, with that package on it. And they live in the state of Nevada, I believe. So about the story that I want to tell y'all, it's a story that a lot of people in the performance world have heard before, and what makes us, I want to call it good performance builders, a bad rap, and it makes real car enthusiasts not want to be car enthusiasts anymore, the situation that they went through, and I feel bad for them. They went from having a solid 1,000 horsepower car that drove great to taking their car to a local shop for general maintenance, and they were told that the engine was broke, this was broke, a whole bunch of things were wrong with it, and they needed money to fix it. Well, they just trusted the person that was telling them this because, again, they're not, educated when it comes to the engines of these things and the transmissions and so forth. So long story short, I won't go into crazy detail, but they gave this customer, or they gave the shop a whole bunch of cash up front to get the build going, and months go by and they hear nothing in response, like no updates, no ETAs, nothing. Finally, they get to a point where they even call me, which was, again, probably a year or so after this other shop had the car, and say, hey, look, I think something's going on. I gave this guy a whole bunch of money. I'm not hearing any progress. Would you be willing to take the car back and get it back to where it was, if not better than where it was before? And of course, I said, sure. We normally don't take cars in pieces, but because he was a previous client and a good client, I told him, no matter the situation, I'll help you out as best I can. So fast forward, and they go pick the car up. Long story short, it sounds like the guy was a crook. The business closed down. All they found was the shell of the car sitting there, I think with just the supercharger. I think just the head unit alone. So transport showed up to Houston with just the roller, and I think the head unit was in a box, and a few other small pieces were in a box. But it was missing all the accessories, a whole bunch of nuts and bolts. Again, a nightmare for a car owner as well as me, the next car builder, because you have to go back and figure out what's missing before you can even start on something like that. So most customers at that point, and this is where I say it gives people like us a bad name, most people would stop right then and there and just count their losses and just sell the car. And in their situation, they're motorcycle people. Mr. and Mrs. Stuberg, they love riding Harleys, and they love cruising on the weekends, enjoying their time. Like I said, most people would just given up and just said, you know what, let's just keep spending our money on our Harleys and go have fun and pick another hobby. But they were adamant about getting this car finished the right way. And again, I could only do what I could do best and help them achieve their goals with what they wanted to do. So it started off as a just get it back to the way it was, 1,000 horsepower package with 850 rear wheel horsepower, to can it make 1,000 rear wheel horsepower, like our 1,200 horsepower package. Then it went from, can it make like 1,500 horsepower? It just step after step after step. And because they started to see progress, you know, they would give us a deposit like any customer would. We order the parts for it. We show the customer the parts or where we are in the process. They get excited and they're like, okay, cool. Let's do a little bit more. Let's do a little bit more. Let's do a little bit more. And this thing turned out awesome. Absolutely awesome. So it is still an LT engine, 377 cubic inch motor. And instead of the F1A94 head unit, we went ahead and upgraded to an F1X. Again, it was missing a whole bunch of parts. Heck, I don't even know if we had a block for this thing. I think we pretty much bought everything new again for Mr. Stuberg. So once the engine was built, that's when we went into more detail about what their needs and goals were for the vehicle. And at first it was just, hey, you know, it made 850 rear wheel horsepower before. They were able to drive it, take it to car shows, have fun with it. You know, at first they thought 1,000 rear wheel horsepower would be fantastic. Well, it was on direct injection only back then. So going with the F1X supercharger, now kind of the sky's the limit when it comes to horsepower, but there's a whole bunch of other mods that have to take place in order to utilize the F1X. So we went ahead and did the F1X supercharger, complete 10 rib, so we don't have to have belt issues, we don't need belt slip, as well as a complete fuel system to be able to support that kind of horsepower. So their goals went from 850, 1,000 to then 1,200 rear wheel horsepower plus. They would like to say they have a 1,500 horsepower, like flywheel horsepower vehicle that they can drive every day, drive to car shows and enjoy. And if someone on the highway pulls up next to them, they want to be able to beat the crap out of them. And or go to drag strips and have fun with the drag strip. They want to drive it to a drag strip, run an 8-second pass and drive home. So again, once we ordered the big supercharger with the 10 rib conversion on it, then we have to start looking at drivetrain components and fuel components. This thing is now going to be I'm going to call it a 1,200 plus rear wheel horsepower car once we start building it from there. And the transmission, 8-speed autos in these things are very strong from the factory. But when you start making 12 to 1,400 rear wheel horsepower and you actually use it, you're going to start breaking it. So we go from engine being built, we build the transmission, Circle D billet torque converters in it, to then a complete built rear end, as well as the CV axles, and as y'all see here in a second, the complete 15-inch wheel conversion to get this thing to hook up. But that's just the drivetrain components. After that, to be able to make the horsepower, we have to have enough fuel to support it. So instead of it being direct injected, we also have port injection as well, which y'all have seen on a lot of our high horsepower setups. So the car idles and drives around with the factory DI system, meaning we have 3 pumps in the tank, which is electric pumps that feed the mechanical pump. So it idles and drives around on the DI injectors. And then once it sees boost, we have an aftermarket ECM that turns on the port injection so that this car can run on straight E85 and make 1,400 rear wheel horsepower, which is a monster with this thing. And again, talking about fuel system, drivetrain, you try to put that kind of horsepower to the ground, especially rear wheel drive cars, it's really hard to do. And not only that, but then again, you start breaking components. So we have to, just to get this thing to somewhat hook up from a 60-mile-an-hour roll, you have to do obviously a nice wheel and tire combo. So we did a 15-inch wheel with the Mickey Thompson 275 60/15. Believe it or not, this is the exact same tire that's on my 5,000 horsepower Camaro. Now, again, this car at a drag strip, when it dead hooks and goes, or on a street that's prepped, if it wheel hops really bad, CV axles can break. So we have the CV axles upgraded, as well as the complete rear end. Has the quaif differential in it with both shafts on each side, so that this thing can launch with all 1,400 rear wheel horsepower and don't have to sacrifice or worry about something breaking. Again, it is the performance world. No matter the baddest parts we put on these things, things can still break, but we buy and install the best of the best to try and eliminate that as much as possible. So 15-inch wheel conversion, as y'all can see, which takes, you have to put new brakes on the back for the clearance, as well as the CV axles that you can't see, but new lower control arms, billet spindle, all that comes with the 15-inch wheel conversion. Now this is set up for when he wants to go out and street, race it, or go to the drag strip and have fun with it. He still has another set of wheels and tires on it if they want to go on long road trips, or if they want to go to car shows that are really far away and they might get stuck in some rain, that they can put on it and still drive around town. But as y'all can see from looking at it, it's not just a regular Corvette anymore. Not only did they upgrade the performance end of it and the drivetrain to make 1,500 horsepower, they wanted it to look different than everybody else's. As y'all can see here, it's got a carbon fiber roof. So the 19 ZR1s come factory with stuff like this. We got him a full carbon roof, and if you look underneath it, sorry, I got my laptop in here, but beautiful underneath. Sorry. You can see the nice suede under it. With the stitching, it looks so good. And obviously from the outside, the full carbon fiber 19 ZR1 style rear spoiler. And what that does is gives it crazy downforce above 120 miles an hour. And I can say firsthand, this car needs it. And it helps tremendously when you go to top speeds like that. So half-mile events, stuff like that, depends on what we're doing with it. We'll keep it on. If he's going for some top speed times, there's able to remove it from here and here. So again, quarter-mile stuff and just around the street, we can keep it on. But if we're going a half-mile trying to get some top speed, like 200-mile-an-hour stuff, we can take this off for top speed stuff. As y'all can see, because it's such a badass car, Mr. Stuberg and Mrs. Stuberg asked for it to be a Faraday Edition Corvette. So again, I spent many hours going over the build. Again, they kind of stepped it up. So it went from this, that, and it kind of makes it harder for the builder to work like that, to not know the end goal right away. So there were a few times where we'd 2 steps forward, 1 step back. 2 steps forwards, 1 step back, to finally realize, all right, they do want to go all out in everything they want to do to it. So had to put my name on the car. It was something that they wanted. Mr. Stuberg and her, when they get the car back, they do plan on driving it to car shows. But the end goal is to be able to have a Mr., which will be his C7 Corvette, a Faraday Edition, and Miss Stuberg has a C8 Corvette. So once this car gets shipped back to them, they plan on sending the C8 to have a Faraday Edition C8 Corvette, so they can drive together to car shows to go enjoy themselves, which I think is phenomenal. And again, guys, it's hard to express over this how many times I've talked to her on the phone, and she keeps asking me about performance and horsepower and different technical stuff that I love to hear, and you can tell that she gets excited about it. And most of us out there, car guys, we either don't tell our wives how much we spend on our cars, or we kind of just omit what we spend on our cars. In this situation, she knows everything that's done to this thing, and she's just excited as he is. And to me, it makes me excited just to build a car that's so fucking badass that I know that they're gonna love it. So again, behind me, a 1,500 horsepower Faraday C7 Edition Corvette, all the bells and whistles, and it's gonna be a handful. Rear-wheel drive cars like this kind of power level, again, that's why we have to do all the drivetrain components as well as the wheels and tires, so it can be a reliable car that can be driven by anybody, whether it's him or her, whether they're going 1 mile down the road or they're going on a 500-mile road trip. I want them to be able to hop in it and enjoy themselves while they're doing it, as well as to be able to kick the shit out of anybody that pulls up next to them. So I think here in a few minutes, I've dynoed this thing. Our dyno, as I've stated in other videos, a lot of our high horsepower builds, my dyno is so old, the roller is so smooth, it's hard to get a good dyno number out of a high horsepower car. So we have ordered a new dyno. We have a new hub dyno coming. It's being shipped all the way from Australia. We have, I think, another 8 weeks before it gets here because it's coming on a boat. But a dyno like that is what is needed to dyno a car like this, to give y'all a real rear-wheel horsepower dyno number that's accurate, is why I have a dyno coming like that. It's been years in the making. I've just been... So it's a 2015 Corvette. So the one thing that we have not changed is the 9-year-old hood struts. But other than that, everything's been done. It's windy outside. Give me a break. That was pretty good right there. But yes, the new dyno coming. Also, I'm going to go test drive this thing. For me to make sure that this car is right and to check the shift points, a car at this caliber, there's only so many places you can go, whether it's a drag strip or our LMR proving grounds. And it's not only just a safety thing, but then it's kind of, you know, wear and tear on it. But mainly, to be in a controlled environment, I can concentrate on tuning the engine and tuning the transmission. And on my dyno, it's really hard to do it with something like this because I'm spending half the day just getting it to make traction, not focusing on the engine and the transmission. So you have to physically go out and test drive this vehicle to make sure the shift points are right. So I'm about to go do that and see what happens. And then again, I just finished dynoing it. The dyno numbers, I think it stopped at like 1,300 and something rear wheel horsepower, which is pretty much the most my dyno will hold with VHT down and everything. It should truly be a 1,400 plus rear wheel horsepower car if it is actually hooked up on a hub dyno or a dyno that can hold the traction. So I'm gonna go out, make some street drives, and again, I want to prove to you guys and show you guys that a car like this and a car of this caliber, you don't just spend 30 minutes tuning it or an hour tuning it and it's done. This car takes several hours, several days, cold start, hot start, and then to be able to test the shift points, because every car is different when you start building cars of this caliber. You can't just load the same TCM and transmission file in it that I have 1,000 horsepower cars and just expect it to work perfectly. So you're about to ride with me, and it might take a little while, but we're gonna fine tune this thing on the street as safely as possible on our proving grounds to get the shift points close as possible, so that when we, myself or them, go to the drag strip, I know it'll work perfectly for them. All right, so ProCharger system. Most of our 1,000 horsepower cars have air-to-air intercooler systems. This one has a complete air-to-water intercooler. And what that means is air that comes out of the supercharger runs through an intercooler to cool the charge before going into the engine. Well, the air-to-water intercooler is like, think of it like a radiator. So we have water back here that has a big enough opening to put ice in it when we're at the drag strip or at any event. And water with the pump right here circulates through, which you can't see it, but it's in the bumper, is the air-to-water intercooler. And what that does, it keeps the intake air temps super low when we're spinning the supercharger this hard, making these kind of boost levels. We're talking almost 25 pounds of boost with this car. And if it had an air-to-air intercooler on it, by 130 miles an hour, intake air temps would be through the roof. So air-to-water intercooler, even with just water in it while driving around town, water's continually circling through it, keeping the intake air temps down. Now, when he goes to the drag strip or an event and really wants to turn it up, that's when we put ice in it. There's a little drain that makes it nice and easy. Sorry, it's kind of messy. I forgot we were gonna be filming today, but right here, it's very simple. You just flip this, and right underneath in the back, when you're at the drag strip, it can come out right here at the bottom. And we'll tell the customers you don't want to drain it all the way down because you want to scavenge the water pump. So we drain it to about a quarter of a way down, then you pack it full of ice, and then you can circulate it. And check it out in here, guys, because this car does run on pump gas or E85. Like I said, I wanted them to be able to hop in it. If they wanted to go on a 2-hour cruise to some car show, they can put 93 octane in it. Let me move this out of the way. So they can run 93 or E85, but like I told them, when they plan on getting on it, having fun, it needs to have E85 in the tank. We don't want pump gas in a car making 25 pounds of boost. So as always, we installed our P3 gauge, which tells you the ethanol content. So right now you can see should be right around 72% ethanol. In Houston, which is crazy hot, or where he's from, Nevada, we need to make sure coolant temps are good. So as far as all that, we have everything handled up front so that this car, from the engine staying cool, coolant temps, oil temps, the transmission, this car can be street driven just like any other vehicle we build. And like I said, reliably. Making that kind of horsepower, there's always room for things to go wrong, but we do the best thing that we can to keep it safe and reliable for the end user. I guess the only other thing I mentioned briefly was the fuel system. The expensive part of the fuel system is the triple pumps. So you have the factory fuel tanks in the back. There's a fuel tank on each side. We remove the factory hat. We install 3 pumps on one side. Those 3 fuel pumps feed the mechanical fuel pump. So we have at least 60 PSI always going to the mechanical fuel pump for the DI side, as well as feed the port injection. So we have all the fuel we need to support up to 2,000 horsepower on E85. And again, that's all built at the same time. We do the ice tank because we got to run all the water lines from the front all the way to the back, which is a lot of work, and it's a lot easier with the torque tube and the drivetrain pulled out of it. So again, talking about going back in stages, if we knew from the get-go it was going to be air to water and all this stuff, we could have done it a lot easier. Sometimes we had to work on the car, and then the mechanics wouldn't be so happy when I said, oh, by the way, take that back apart because we're about to add X, Y, and Z to it. So it just took a little bit longer than most because we didn't have that end goal right away. But at the end of the day, the end goal turned out phenomenal. And I'm about to go test drive it so y'all can see what it looks like on the street. Did I already say that? One more cool thing. Sorry, I keep forgetting stuff. Another thing we added was the Corsa exhaust with the dual mode. So on the highway, you can have it quiet, and if they pull into a car show, hit a button, and the baffles open and makes it super loud. Mr. Stuberg's 2015 Corvette, full Faraday edition, 1,500 horsepower. I'm not gonna lie, I test drove this car a couple days ago after the dyno. I tried a quick 3rd to 4th gear pull with traction control off, and it scared the crap out of me. So I'm gonna drive it today, and I'm gonna leave traction control on. See if I can't check all the shift points with traction control on. It's gonna spin pretty good, so it'll limit the throttle and pull out timing. So the 6130 time probably won't be the best, but I want to try it and see what happens. Traction control definitely did its job. I could feel it. I gotta pull over and look at the logs. That thing was ridiculous in 3rd and 4th gear. And I gotta check the shift points. I think it shifted early, or the converter locked up in 5th. So I'm gonna pull over, take a look at the logs. I think it still went like a 4.1, which is just insane. still short shifted. God, this thing's flying once it goes. Holy crap. I stayed in it, even though it short shifted, because I wanted to see what it did after I made the pull. Yeah, another 4. That was a 4.4, I think, and a 4.2. So I gotta check and see where it shifted. It definitely short shifted really bad. So let me pull over. I'm trying to make little changes at a time. I don't like swinging for it. So I guess I'm kind of showing y'all how this stuff works. That's why it's not just load and go. We have to make sure these cars are perfected. And again, that's still fast as crap, but it can be a little bit better. Have my hands full with that one. Holy crap, she's rolling. The still short shifted the 1, but the 100 to 150, it was in gear and it was rolling. I know it's gonna be quicker. The 60 to 130 is probably gonna be the same, but from 100 to 150, she was moving. So it's still got a few adjustments to do. Again, it's getting late in the day, so I'll probably have to cut this video here now and restart again tomorrow to make a few more. But I want to say that was like another 4.2 with the bad shift, but then the 100 to 150, 3.8. I knew it, rolling out the big end. So again, just need to make a few more adjustments. Hopefully I'll have time tomorrow. Hopefully the weather will be better too. And we'll go from there. Car is fun as hell to drive. Holy shit. I love my job. But yeah, doing it on a dyno, our hub dyno that we have coming, I'll be able to fine tune these exactly and then just make one pull on the track or on our proving grounds like this, just to confirm everything does the exact same thing it'll do on the dyno. We have a new hub dyno coming that's loaded, hooks up to the actual hub so you don't have to worry about wheel speed, wheel spin. Cars like this that make this kind of power, I'm literally playing with the dyno all day long just to get traction, which is stupid. So the new dyno can't get here fast enough for cars like this. Give me a second. So, again, most of our videos, guys, I can't even talk. I'm still shaking a little bit. I've had a few minutes to drive back here. So, pulled over. I went and tried to make a few 60 to 130 for you guys to kind of show, A, the customer what it can do, as well as you, the viewers, on a car of this caliber, and mainly anything with horsepower. And I don't want to say that. Anyone can make horsepower. Getting it to the ground and getting it to work is the problem, or most of the problem is the difficulty. So a rear-wheel drive car making anything over 1,000 rear-wheel horsepower is usually a handful to drive. This thing with 1,400, whatever the heck it's making right now, whew, put it this way, I tried traction control off at first without the cameras rolling, thinking hey, I've done this a million times. I said, nope, traction control back on, and then you'll see what I just did. I made 3 60 to 130 pulls, and just kind of to repeat myself, hopefully I'm not, but to go over it. A car like this caliber, you don't just hop in it after the dyno tune is just done. There's fine tuning to the engine as well as the transmission. The transmission is the main thing, because a customer like this, most of our customers, they like the roll racing. They like going on the highway, going 60 to 130, 60 to 150, 60 to 200, whatever they want to do. I want to make sure it works perfectly. So when you put this thing in manual mode, you can downshift it to what gear you want and just floor it and go. And you can't just tell it, I want to shift it 7,000 RPMs, and it does it every time. You have to do multiple things in the TCM to get it to work. And as y'all saw, I made 3 pulls. The first pull, I think, was a 4.3, 60 to 130. The second pull was where I messed up. It went like a 4.4, 60 to 130. And then the last pull that y'all just saw was a 4.2, 60 to 130, and a 3.8 from 100 to 150. And that's still with the 4.5 shift, shifting early. So I cut this video short, or I should say my testing short, just because it's the end of the day and I want to get this filmed and finished. So come tomorrow, I'm going to finish fine-tuning that last gear shift, and I know that this thing has a high 3-second 6130 pass in it. But whew, that's a handful. Traction control on, Mr. Stuberg, Mrs. Stuberg, please leave traction control on. Enjoy it. Once you get more comfortable, then you can start going from lower gears. But I always tell customers, put it in 4th or 5th gear, kind of just roll into it, because you can feel the horsepower. You get comfortable, then drop it down a gear, do it again, get more comfortable, drop it down a gear again. But this thing from a 3rd gear roll was freaking awesome. Like I said, I had missed on 1 shift point. The 4.5 shift point still shifted early. And I explain in a lot of my videos. A centrifugal blower car makes all of its horsepower up top because we're spinning the supercharger harder and harder and harder. So if it short shifts, meaning if, let's say, it shifts at 6,500 RPMs instead of 7,000, the gear extension, or the shift extension they call it, goes from 65 down to like 5,200 RPMs. And this car doesn't make boost as much horsepower at 5,200 RPMs where it will at 6,500 or 7,000. So if we shift it higher, the shift extension, instead of dropping to 5,000, it'll drop to, like, say 5,500 or 5,800 RPM, more in its power band to keep it accelerating. So you'll see in the video about 100 and I think, was it 12 or 118 miles an hour? You can kind of see it fall on its face and then pick up again. That's why the 100 to 150, still fast, but that ET will improve as well just from fixing that 1 shift point. But all in all, badass car, absolutely love it. I know the Stubergs are gonna love it. Hopefully we can get some footage of them driving it in the future in Nevada to share with you guys as well. And then next up will be Mrs. Stuberg's Faraday C8 coming our way for a build soon. Again, thank you for your business as always. Those of you new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. We have a whole bunch of badass builds in the works, as well as new C8 platforms I know y'all are gonna wanna see. Till next time, guys.
Yeah.